Foundation Season 3 quite literally returned with a bang in the opening scene of Episode 1. We finally got to see the Mule being introduced to us in the most villainous of ways. He single-handedly wiped out Archduke Balerian's army in his quest to conquer Calgon, and he did it all with ease and with a smile on his face. The big bad boss has finally arrived, and after being teased for a large part of Season 2 with his arrival, I'm glad that he's finally made his first true appearance and that he was the first thing that we saw when the show opened. So with that, I wanted to dive into the character, look at his backstory, what his motives are, his powers, and share where the direction of the character could go in Season 3 of the Apple TV series. So let's get into it. Here is Foundation Season 3, The Mule Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The Mule's powers. When it comes to the powers and abilities that the Mule has, he's arguably the most powerful mentalic that there is. We saw Tellum in Season 2, and she was a force to be reckoned with and proved to be a tough match for Gale and Harry Seldon. But now, imagine Tellum but dosed up and her powers amplified even more. The Mule's main power, as we saw in the opening scene of the first episode, is that he's able to enter the mind of those that he wants to enter, and he's able to convince them to do whatever it is that he wants them to do, rendering them unconscious and paralyzing them to the point where it's what he demands and they'll do it, no matter how dangerous or damaging it could be, and no matter how much the other person doesn't want to do it. For example, we saw that he got all of the Archduke's men to kill each other, and even though the Archduke didn't want to do it, he bit off his own finger and then ended things for himself. His eyes spoke 1,000 words in showing the resistance that he was truly feeling and that paralysis from the inside out that he had. As we've seen, the Mule can quite literally take over and conquer planets with true ease with this singular power alone. As well as that, when it comes to the other powers that he holds, he's able to enter an individual's mind and view it as a physical space. This was seen before when Tellum entered Gale's mind in Season 2 and showed her synapse. So what he'd be able to do is enter a person's mind, dig through their memories and be able to manipulate them due to the emotional pull that showing them that space would have on them. Within the novel, there was a power that he exhibited where he combined his psychic mentalic abilities with a Visisonar, which was a multicolored keyboard that produced holographic visual effects as well as music, and it allowed him to control the minds of entire populations at once, something which would be extremely powerful. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's going to feature in the show. However, what I will say is, judging by the tone and direction that the show has gone when it comes to the Mule, I can't see this one playing a keyboard. He's very different to how he is in the novels. One final power that one would imagine that the Mule could well have is another that Tellum exhibited when we saw her on screen. Tellum was essentially able to take on the form of another individual and essentially be reincarnated as them when she reached the point of old age. So if a powerful mentalic like her could do that, I wonder if he'd also be able to do the same. The Mule's appearance and how it differs to the books. Well, between Season 2 and Season 3, the role was actually recast. And to be fair, I completely forgot that Michael Presbrant was there in the future in Season 2 when Gale put herself there. So in Season 3, we're seeing Pilo Aspect playing the character who wants to destroy the Second Foundation, and so far, he's done a great job. When it comes to the attire that the Mule wears, with him viewing himself as a galactic warlord, he fits himself with clothing and attire that one would most likely wear. Plates of armor covering his torso and arms, but I also thought it was interesting that he had a satchel with bullets filling it up. I found this particularly interesting because they were all in there, and he doesn't strike me as somebody that would turn to using a gun, because he almost doesn't need to. As we saw when he met the Archduke, he was already in his mind before he laid eyes on him, and he didn't need to look directly into his eyes in order to gain mind control. So I wonder if he's carrying a weapon on him just as a failsafe and as an alternative way of fighting off immediate danger if he's not able to gain total control. As well as that, he also had these goggles that covered his eyes, something that felt like it was more for aesthetics to start with. This might change as the season goes on because we could well see these goggles operating in a certain way and serving a purpose. Overall, when it comes to his appearance in the show, he's a regular looking person that would blend in and not stand out within a crowd if he was in disguise. However, that is different from the novels. When comparing this to his appearance in the novels, there have been some slight changes from a creative point of view in the show. Within the novels, it was said that the mule was seen to be viewed as a freak by most people that looked at him. He had a nose which was long and stuck out several inches from his face, and the flesh on the rest of his face stretched across his skull tightly. His body was described to be gangly, and he didn't weigh much at all, so he was extremely skinny and gaunt, and he was around 5'8". The closest thing that he was said to resemble was a scarecrow, and anybody that looked at him would often mock him. The only part of him that didn't stand out in a negative way were his eyes, which were said to be brown and also exhibited a sense of sadness. This is most likely because of all of the abuse that he'd been on the receiving end of throughout his life due to no true fault of his own, just because of the way he looked. So as you can see, the show took a completely different approach with both of the castings that they did. The show definitely leaned more into the galactic warlord approach and made him more cunning and charming, which naturally ties into the whole power of him being able to make people do what he wants. It would have been cool to have seen a deranged, odd-looking scarecrow-like character, but I'm happy with what we got as it still worked well. The charming lightheartedness is a way that I feel the show latched onto that and interpreted it. I would say that I kinda preferred the look of the original casting. He looked just a bit more evil and it felt like there was more of a natural darkness to him, but I don't doubt that Pillow Aspect will smash it. He was great in Game of Thrones when playing the villainous type role, so I'm sure we'll see him thrive in this show. The Mule's Motive. The Mule's main motivation is that of wanting to conquer the galaxy and be a totalitarian dictator with nobody standing in his way. Within the show, which is slightly different to the novels, his sole intention is to destroy Harry Seldon, Gal Dornick, who has appeared to him in the future, and also the Second Foundation. This is because he knows the strength that lies within it and the opposition that he'll face when up against them. That's why we saw him seeking it out in the vision that Gal had when she confronted him in Season 2, where she also saw the death of Salvor Hardin. So the Mule wants total control and he's simply not going to stop until he gets it. When it comes to how the Mule quite literally became the Mule, well, he gave himself that name himself, and he was said to be a criminal on his home planet due to him abusing his mentalic powers to manipulate people. He simply escaped the planet when he was younger and set off on his quest of conquering the galaxy due to his hatred for it. And the first thing that he did was take a pirate's asteroid base 25 years after he was born. What happens to the Mule? When it comes to the fate of the Mule and if he's successful or if he ends up dying, in the case of all iconic villains, he meets the fate which many of them do, being defeated and ultimately dying. The Mule was successful in taking over some planets and actually created something called the Union of Worlds, which held a third of the known galaxy, which also included Trantor. It was actually considered to be the greatest threat to the Foundation in history from a military and a political perspective due to the unpredictable nature of what they do. This was led by the Mule, and he held the title of the first citizen of the Union, as he founded it. The Mule ultimately met his demise when he was tricked by the first speaker of the Second Foundation, and he fell into a trap where Bal Chanis, who was a Second Foundation agent in disguise, went on the 6th expedition of 301 FE, which was made out to be successful. But in actual fact, the Mule had his mind altered, which marked an end to the Mule's reign and made him more docile. The Mule ultimately ended up dying earlier than he should have done. The Mule is a very interesting character, and he's one that I'm looking forward to seeing being explored in the show. Ever since he was teased to us when he was first mentioned in Season 1, but then also in that vision in Season 2, I've had theories and simply wondered what it'd be like. In seeing that opening scene in Episode 1, I feel we saw a villain that's not going to hold back in the slightest until he gets what he wants, and we've seen that he'll destroy or take over planets as long as it brings him closer to his end goal. So it's going to be exciting to watch. Whilst he's not going to be the exact same in terms of his characteristics that are in the novel, I mean, look at the difference. I think we're going to see a character that will have the same core values and end goal though. So it'll be just as good. So, there you have it. Foundation Season 3, The Mule Explained. If you want to see every episode of Foundation Season 3 being broken down, then check the playlist below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What were your first impressions of the Mule in the opening scene? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.